Welcome back to Time to Write. I'm Amy,
I'm
and
Emily.
this is my good friend Em. And today we are going to be talking about what do you want? And when we say that, we're talking about your characters. What do they want? Talk to me about character wants. This is something that we talk about quite often in our critique group. So
Right.
let's jump
So
in.
I recently was talking about this. I posted a TikTok and an Instagram about this, and people really responded. So the thing that is really important for characters is they have to want something at the beginning of the book, and it has to be big enough to carry you forward. It has to be big enough to have a whole story built around it, because this is our characters are not little sticks that are being knocked through a river. They're in a boat. Like, they have to be in a boat in the river. And if they're in a boat, they are going somewhere. And the place they are going is their character wants. So I have a story about this from my own life that I think sort of gives you an example of how want can infuse everything. So when I was in high school, all that I wanted was to leave the state of Arkansas for college. That was my whole driving goal, which is funny because of course I've ended up back here, but that at that point, that was all I wanted. So here I am, 16 years old. I was a sophomore in high school and I wanted to leave the state for college. And I was on a date with a boy who was a senior in high school, and he was very cute to me at that time. And on the date is very clear that he is moving fast. And I just was like, stop, dude. I am not having sex with you. I'm not going to happen. And he's like, what? And I'm like, it's never going to happen because I am leaving the state for college. And that does not run through anything like that with you. There's all these complicated. No.
Right.
And he ended up breaking up with me, which I was totally fine with, because I was like, we can date, we can go out, we can get ice cream, go to McDonald's, walk by the pond, whatever. But this isn't happening. And so that's, to me, such a great example of the way that when you want something big, even all these other things get rearranged. Like, if that hadn't been my driving want, I wouldn't have had nearly so strong of a reason. He was cute. I just, no. And so I think for our characters, the way that for me that want drove everything I did for 3 years. Should I join this club? Should I go do this? How does that impact my ability? Like, I didn't go on senior skip day because I was terrified that that would somehow impact my ability. And so people will be like, oh, that person wants to get in a good college. No. I wanted to leave.
Right. 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 Well, and I think as we're talking about our characters, that's a great example. And I would add, with our characters, we really kind of want to ratchet it up even more than that. And also, just for the sake of the story, throw in maybe an opposing want, like something. What else could you have wanted if this was a story you're writing?
Right.
That would have conflicted with I want to get out of here. I think
Right.
if you had wanted to really have a boyfriend, or was real, you were really in love with this boy, or whatever, that would have been a story conflict that could have
Right.
taken you through,
And
right?
that is also a great example of the way a character when a character really wants something, it can really set them up in opposition, especially if that character want is in opposition to another, because everybody in a scene should want something.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
if, even if what they want is to, like, you could think one of the super fun things, and this is to set up little conflicts in your story. Like, even when you've got a scene where a character is like just trying to get from point A to point B, see if you can put little conflicts in. Just the best example I can think of is like the air conditioner. Let's imagine two people are trying to have a conversation and one of them wants it to be 84 and one of them wants to be 68. That, just think about for a second. You're trying to, like, you're applying for a job. You want the job, but it is 84 degrees in the room. All of a sudden, how you respond to that is going to be really different based on how much you want the job.
Right.
If you only want the job a little bit, you're going to be like, it's hot in here. I am out. If you really want the job, then you add like, I'm sweating through my jacket. Like,
Right.
how
Shifting
do I,
shifting
how do I
uncomfortably in your
not
chair.
smell terrible with the, so
Yeah.
that want that a character has really should be driving everything. And there's a couple other important pieces. The character want does not actually have to be, and in fact, I think if you're writing a change narrative, it should not be the thing they actually need.
Oh yeah. Right. Right.
And sometimes Moana is a great example of like what Moana wants us to go to see, what Moana needs to do is to go to see. So that she just needs to believe that she can. So that's not a change, that's a growth narrative, not a change narrative. But in a change narrative, what a character wants oftentimes isn't actually the thing they need. But to drive the story, they need to want
Well,
something.
right. And to dive into that a little bit deeper, I think in those kinds of stories, their want is tied to their misbelief.
Right.
So, right. So, and the change is letting go of that misbelief. And right.
Right.
And
so can you concretize? So even like Matt, let's think like I wanted to leave the state for college. I had a very clear view of what I wanted. Like I didn't want to go to California. I wanted like New England, and like I had a vision. So you can, when you're thinking about character want, even if you're writing a story where a character wants to leave somewhere, they have an idea. They have a map. What you're building when you're building want is the map of the vision of themselves that they have. So if you're thinking about like writing a character who wants to be enormously successful, it's not enough to say they want to be successful, because different people have different versions of success. You want to really identify what is that character's version of success.
Right. And I would say too, there are often like kind of two rails, which would be like their internal wants, which would be like why you wanted to leave. And then the external would be leaving. So the reason Ariadne wanted to leave in Lifestyles was because
she's completely invisible in that world.
Right.
Like no one sees her for who she feels completely alone. And of course, in Lifestyles, you totally have a conflicting want, which is that she can't leave because she's got this brother who's completely dependent on her.
Right.
So she wants to leave and she wants to save her brother. And those two things
completely clash.
Completely. Yeah. That's why, why can't she leave? She can't leave because if she leaves, her brother's completely abandoned. So that's the place where your characters get. And that is such a fun place to start a story, is when they're there. And then when the thing comes in that change. So in Ariadne's case, Theseus arrives.
Right.
And everything changes. But
well, I just was going to say too, it's really interesting in a story, and I think it really drives it when the opposing force is internal and within yourself.
Is internal.
Right. And so sometimes the opposing force is external. It's something outside of you. Like I would even say Ariadne's father would be an outside opposing force. Right. So.
Well, and this gets back to, actually, this is a really important piece about character want. Your character want has to be big enough that if your character was offered it on page 1, they couldn't take it.
Right.
Something like it has to be like, if someone brought me a college acceptance letter at 16 and said, now you can go to Harvard, I would not have been able to go to Harvard. I didn't know enough, like that's a small, but in general, and the greatest stories are the ones where the obstacle to being able, well, I love a change story. So
yeah, same.
The obstacle to getting what they want is internal.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's think about want again. This is a really important point. I want everyone to hear. Wanting something for someone else is not a character want. I just want everyone to be happy. That is not a character want. That is not. I know. And if you were sitting here in your own life and you were telling me, but I just want everybody to be happy. No. Send a minute. Think about it. That is not the only thing you want.
I do think, though, that can be within a story what the character says, but you build it so that you know, wait, no, what she actually wants is to be
Right.
invisible or to make up for taking the attention from her little brother when she was younger. And so she's trying to disappear
Or to be
or
a great
whatever.
mother. Here's a great example. If your character
Yes.
wants to be a great mother, your character believes I can only be a great mother if everyone else in this family is happy. How many of us know this person?
Right.
I can only be a great mother if everyone else is happy. And then everyone else is like on eggshells because,
We have to be
of course,
happy. We have to be
our
happy.
happiness is not actually reliant on this other person. Our happiness is internal. And so you end up so your character can say all day long, I only want what's best for you, other person. But a person wants. It's so I'd love to think, and if you're listening to this podcast, if you're still listening and you're getting super triggered by this, because lots of women are raised to be very triggered about this, think about want as a seed in the ground wants to grow towards the sun. That is a want. That it wants to not wither and die. Wanting is integral to all living things. So your characters have to want something, even if the wanting is only some peace and quiet.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in a super chaotic house, peace and quiet can be hard to come by. So,
Right. Well,
but what is their vision of that?
right. And I think whatever the story is that you're crafting, that has to be a big, 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 super exaggerated want.
Yes,
And
because writing stories where characters only want really small things is actually that Meglafove always says this on Screenwriting Life. So I'm stealing this from her. It's really high math. It's really, really, really hard to make people. If you have ever thrown a book in anger or just dropped it because you were so bored, it is often because the character's want is too small.
yeah.
And so if you're building your story, especially like if you're just, well, actually, no, because this is true for all of us. I would say this is true for me and Amy both. One of the things is to make sure that you've made the characters want big enough, and you might need to exaggerate it a lot because they're protagonists. They deserve to be the central character in a story. And I am super committed to making sure that like lots of different people get to see themselves as being the central character in the story, being a protagonist, which means that your character's want could be, I want to bake the best darn cupcake in this whole town. That's a want. That's a
Mm-hmm.
story want. How are they going to determine what's their vision of what that looks like?
Right. And why do they want it? Because
Why do they want it?
that's the backstory that you need to know as the author, even if it never goes on the page of your book. And I would say too, for me, a, sometimes it's scary to give your character a really big want because you love your character. They're your baby, like they're your person that you've made, and you don't want bad things to happen to them. And when you have a really big want in a story, like you're going to get knocked down and punched a lot. As you should be. So you're going to have to put them through their paces, which is sometimes like you're too close to them and you have to take a step back.
There's a trick for this. If you've been writing and if you've been brainstorming and thinking, look around your writing that you've done and see, is there a character adjacent to your character that a lot of stuff happens to? Yeah, maybe
Right.
that's your main character.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that's your main character. Like a lot of us. So one of the things about us as writers, not every writer is true for, but many of us as writers, we have a lot of experience with observing. And so we will tend to write a lot of characters who are observers.
Mm-hmm.
And just understand that like that does not, your character can be observant, but a protagonist, like this, I'm going to get super nerdy here for a second. Protagonist, agon, the middle of protagonist is the root word from which we get act, action,
Agony.
ago, like it means to do.
Mm-hmm.
The protagonist is the person who does.
Right. And going
And the
back
pro is toward. That's why
toward action.
antagonist is the person who agons, does, in opposition to our protagonist. So protagonists do. They do.
Right. And going back to your example of if there's someone adjacent, a lot of times you can even eliminate that character
Oh,
and
right.
throw
Just
throw
give all
all
that
that
stuff
action to your
to your
main
main character.
character.
Another big thing is a lot of us, I'm not even going to gender it because I think it's a lot of us, our characters, and I discovered this when we will talk more about the republishing of a former one of my novels on future podcasts, and I will announce and we will do all the things, but I'm reworking and republishing an older novel. And I realized that my character was your characters have to react some in act one. They just do. Things are happening to them. They're not, unless they're like already a superhero, which they probably aren't. They're gonna be scrambling by a quarter of the way through your book. Your characters need to be acting. And even if I've done a trick for myself where I realize sometimes I won't write act, I'll just write choice. What choice is the character making? Because sometimes my brain is like, gets all wiggy about acting. So choice helps me because then your character, because of course we all know this in real life, right? Sometimes not choosing is choosing. So it may be that your character is choosing not to do something. You just need to understand that that's what's happening. Whether the character understands it or not. The author needs to understand, oh, my character, because one of the fun things about characters is a lot of times characters think they don't have choices. And they'll realize like right before act 3 that they do have choices. Lots of characters think they don't have choices. And so they're just acting based on misbeliefs, programming, the culture, whatever. So they're acting they're making automatic actions from the point of view that they don't have a choice. And then they open their eyes and they realize they do have a choice. So that is a case of where your character can be acting and doing, but still bring it back to the framework of want. They want something.
Right. Well, and I think if you want to get really granular, so we've talked about the big want, but I think in every scene, everyone has a want for that particular scene.
This is a great example of this book by Brandon Collins, which I have sitting right here.
Yes.
Which we have definitely recommended before on the podcast. It's called Getting into Character, and it's about how actors, 7 secrets a novelist can learn from actors. And one of the things she talks about, which I just totally love, is, and I did not know this, but I've recently been doing a lot of screenwriting also. And they say when an actor shows up to do a scene, they have to be able to play something. They have to want something. Every actor, even an extra, wants something. Otherwise, they're just, think about it. Like if you just got put in a scene and you don't know what you want, you're a cardboard cutout. Cardboard cutouts don't want things. People want things, even if it's just that you're thirsty.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's just to get, from point A to point B and the train station or
right.
Like
whatever. And there are
it
people
is
in the way. And so you think about like, let's give an example of like, and really trying to add conflict to every scene. Okay. So your character wants, let's stick with the idea of your character wants to go somewhere. Your character wants to go somewhere. They're trying to make a train. In front of them, maybe there's a family that's all trying to herd 7 children to the bathroom. And all of a sudden your character is like, and think about it, if for anybody who's listening to this podcast who's a mother, if you have a kid in transit that is about to wet their pants, you don't care what anybody else, especially if you forgot to bring a change of pants, which ADHD here, yes, you probably did. You don't care where the president of the United States should be coming through. And if I have a 3-year-old who is about to pee the only pair of pants he has, I'm going to be like, excuse me.
Yeah.
He has to get to the bathroom or he can pee by this trash can. I don't care. And so your character, if they're bumping up against that, that's conflict in the scene, even though it's not, the big bad guy showed up. So, okay. We're running low on time. So let's jump into mindset.
Okay. So I would say for this one, it's okay to want, and to want in a big way. And I have personally struggled with, this is where I feel like I've done a lot of growing over the past few years, which is asking for what you want yourself and identifying that is super helpful. So, but just knowing, like, ratchet it up, make it big, make it just totally extra. Right. Okay. And so what would be the practical thing to do there, Em?
So I feel like one of the best ways, again, getting back to actors, one of the best ways to see this in action is to watch movies and try to identify, what does the character want? Because if you're watching a movie, if it's a good one, especially if it's stood the test of time, characters will want something. So just identify, what does the character want? What does the protagonist want? What do the other people on the scene want? Just kind of start to think that way. And then you'll start to see all the opposing forces that are in play.
Right.
And for those of us who struggle with passive characters, okay, I have talked about, maybe not on the podcast, but I love this. Okay, so if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, in the Two Towers, in the beginning of the Two Towers, Merry and Pippin are being carried across Rohan by orcs. They are as helpless as it is possible to be, right? They are completely helpless. And what does Pippin do? He pulls his brooch off his shirt with his mouth and he spits it on the ground so that if they are being followed, they will know that they're alive. And of course, that is what happens. But that's an example of, like, even at the most helpless point, your characters can continue to act. Even that's an action, right? Like, and your character's actions should make waves in this story. So, so that's a thing to do.
Well, and what came to mind for me just really quickly is, one of my favorite movies is 13 Going on 30 with Jennifer Garner.
Oh, I love that movie.
Isn't that so fun? And I'm just thinking, sometimes it's okay to have your character just say it out loud. Like, I'm thinking of her in the closet as a 13-year-old going, like, I just want to be 30 and flirty and thriving, 30 and flirty. And, like, so
yes,
there's a want right there.
Yeah.
Just laid out. So it's okay.
And they can tell it to a friend. They can
write in their journal, and
they can write in their journal, right? They can sing it in a song. Songs are another great example. People want things in songs. They're singing about something. All right, next steps. Pen to paper, people.
Well, and just really, really play around with your characters and see what kind of opposing wants you can give them. Like, what is going to make it just super interesting to you, hard for them, like something that would absolutely prevent them from getting either one. Like, they're mutually exclusive. Right.
And you can make, like, I can remember, this is another story about me. I was, as probably mentioned on the podcast, pretty horribly bullied as a 6th, 7th, 8th grader. I had my Academy Award speech memorized. I had whole visions of the Academy Award speech I was going to give, which basically was like, now you'll be sorry you were so terrible to me. But that absolutely can drive. The other thing is to understand is the way that character want can be a lifeboat for your character. Like this thing they want can feel like sometimes the thing you want is the only thing that's going well in your life.
Mm-hmm. It's the
So
thing that's saving you.
it's the thing that's saving you. So make it big. Make it big. You can always ramp it back.
Right. Right.
So
We're going to do our normal thing where we talk about our high low. So Em, why don't you get us started? What's your high low?
my high is super fun, which is it was just the 4th of July. And I took my youngest kid and went to visit some relatives who live in a very small town. And we had a little small town 4th of July, which was very fun.
Sweet.
And we had a ball. And my low is only that was like involved like 14 hours of driving, which wasn't even that big a low because we listened to the Fellowship of the Ring, which means we were 8 hours in and we're barely out of the Shire. So
okay, so how long is that? How long is the audio for that?
It's like 20 hours or something. So.
Wow. Wow, that's a cross-country road trip.
Yes.
For sure.
What about you?
Sure. Okay, so for me, I'm actually going to start with my low, which is, so I've been working on my young adult novel that I started several years ago, and I'm trying to rework it, and I just feel like I've been banging my head against the wall. So I took a step back and I thought, how do I want to move forward on this? And I decided to take a break, which leads to my high, which is as part of my break, I just thought, what would make this fun for me? And which is a question that Enneagram 7 often asks, right? But what I decided what I would do just for fun is to write a rom-com, which I read lots of romance. We've talked about that before. And I feel like there's a real niche of like sweet, clean reads. In fact, there's a lady that I follow on Instagram, and I think that's what her handle is, like sweet, clean reads. So if you like that kind of thing, you can go follow her. But anyway, so I decided I would do that, and my brain just exploded with ideas. And as of right now, and I think I'm maybe like a week and a half in, I have like I've created a small town and put it on the map in Texas, and done a lot of research, and I've created a family and the inciting incident that's going to be kind of the impetus for all their 6 sisters, and they're each going to have a book, and I have them all like laid out as far as what romantic trope is going to be for each of those, which I'm so excited. If you don't know what romantic tropes are, it would be things like falling in love with your best friend's brother, or friends to lovers, or enemies to lovers, or second chances, or I mean, there's a million that you can.
Just one bed.
Just one bed. Right. So fake relationships, that's another favorite. So
Prince in disguise. I love a prince in disguise.
So I don't have that, but I do have the rock star. So the rock star romance. So anyway, super fun. I'm having a great time with it. And I've done things like, so their last name, my favorite color is green. So green is part of their last name. And so I've created a color palette and given each of them a font. So anyway, can you tell like I'm giddy talking about it? So
it's so exciting.
Anyway,
and
so fun.
As related to the things we talk about for marketing, which this is not a marketing podcast, this is a craft podcast, but for those of you who work this way, this is where your author marketing can totally live.
So yeah, for sure. And so I'm totally going to use all this for my Instagram, for all of my marketing as I roll forward. But it has just infused everything that I'm doing with so much fun and joy. And so, yeah, I feel like it was exactly what I needed. And I feel like it's practically writing itself. So anyway,
it's very exciting.
The other fun thing that I've been doing, because I am setting it in like a small town in Texas, I am I'm a sixth generation Texan, and one of my relatives has done like the genealogy and all that. So I've been going back through and just kind of looking through some of that information and trying to figure out like, okay, where do I want to place this? And that's been part of my research too. So
fun.
Yeah, totally fun. So I see a road trip in my future.
I was about to say, I see a small town getaway in your future.
For sure. For sure.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Also, really quickly, what are you reading?
Oh, what am I reading?
Yes,
I'm listening
saving
to
your
the
life.
Fellowship of the Ring with my child who is laughing at how long everything takes.
Yeah.
What about you?
I just finished a book called The Book Charmer that was just super sweet, super sweet. It's our critique partner recommended it and I loved it. I can't remember who the name of the author is, but so sweet. And I just got the second book from the library. So
Yay.
Just a sweet little story. A little bit of everyday magic in it. And
I love it.
magic. I know, for sure. So
join us on our Patreon.
Yes, we have a Patreon.
We do. We have a Patreon. All right. Thanks for coming, guys.
Bye. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
We love our people and we want to get to know you better.
So email us at questions@timetowritepodcast.com to have your questions considered for the show.
You can also suggest topics by emailing us there.
Also, drop us a review on Apple Podcasts. Not only will it thrill us,
seriously, we read everyone.
It also helps others find the show.
We're driven by sharing stories, and your review helps us do that.
Just remember, your stories matter, and we're rooting for you to find time to write.
Even if it's only 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you can do it.
You can do it.